Hello, 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 and welcome back to my channel. I'm Moriarty, and you guys asked for more commentary, and lo and behold, EA gave me an excuse to make more commentary opinion-style videos. So, unless you live under a rock, you probably know that the Electronic Arts CEO, Andrew Wilson, was on an earnings call recently, and he said some things that involved the word multiplayer and future development of a Sims sequel further down the timeline. And everyone has been speculating ever since then. So in this video, I am going to spend 20 minutes discussing 2 sentences of an earnings call. No, I'm not going to do that. I read over the whole earnings call. I'm also done some research on EA's past, their present. If you did not watch my previous video in defense of developers, I do not work for EA, I do not work for a game developer, I do work for a software developer, I don't have any insider info about EA, I just know kind of how the industry works, and I'm framing things from that perspective, so this isn't like, ooh, tea. I wish I had tea. I have not been stalking the hallowed halls of the EA offices, mostly because I'm too lazy to do so. So I think the first thing we need to look at is, why was this information released now? It's because this was not any planned type of disclosure. At the beginning of the call, both the CEO and the COO had the opportunity to prepare speeches about, like, the company's profit and losses and the various franchises and, like, the big information that investors are going to be interested in. They did not mention anything multiplayer or anything of that nature in those prepared remarks. I think it's very important when we're considering this that we need to understand the context in which it came up in. Basically, every quarter, businesses that are traded on a public market like NASDAQ, they do a big quarterly meeting where they tell all of their investors, hey, this is where our profit's coming from, this is where our loss is coming from, this is what we plan going forward, things like that, so they can make decisions on the company based on that financial information. At the end, there's a section where people that have a vested interest in the company can ask questions, and that is where this came up from. So this is not CES, this is not E3, this is not and somebody told us this because this is the information that was ready to go out to the public. This is a very pointed question that was asked to people that were in a position where they really can't lie. I don't know if, like, legally you can't lie on these earnings calls. I would say at minimum that it's very inadvisable, because if the people that invested in your company knew you were lying, that it would be not great. The answers did feel, especially the first part of Andrew's answer, felt like a kind of a dance around the subject, something that he didn't want to go into tremendous detail on, which is a bit telling. The full context of the entire meeting is available online. I have a link down below to Motley Fool, which is a financial website. All of this stuff, for the most part, is publicly accessible, publicly available. You can read the whole thing if you're bored. So this is a transcript from the earnings call from Motley Fool. They are a big organization that does investment advice and things like that. So if you look through, they actually never once say Sims 5 in this entire conversation. And there's a couple of interesting things is, for consoles, a lot of times they use next generation to refer to consoles. And one of the things that struck me is really interesting about the quotes about The Sims is that they're saying, and so as Maxis continues to think about The Sims for a new generation across platforms. They're not saying next generation platforms. This obviously is a focus of the younger generation, I think. And I mean, obviously it's consistent with everything else that they're doing. They've always made it pretty clear that they want it to be more child-friendly, and I get that because it's a good way to get people invested in your franchise young and keep them invested, but it's also probably going to mean that we're not going to see another Sims like The Sims 1 or The Sims 2 or even The Sims Online again, with that focus seeming to come on a younger audience. They were very sure to avoid language that had any type of immediacy at all, either in a this is what we're doing next or a this is what we're doing in the next 5 years. So I wouldn't even necessarily assume that this is Sims 5. I wouldn't necessarily assume there aren't multiple projects in the works. This could be a situation where, yes, they're working on Sims 5, but they also might be working on The Sims Online 2, and they may also be working on something that's like Sims Medieval. There's a lot of directions that this could be taken, because there's not even a project code name or anything of the sort. It's very typical CEO, COO, very vague business language where, you're telling the investor, yeah, we're doing what you want us to do, but not giving any type of set framework that the company can be held to or liable for missing or anything like that. I also feel like I have to preface the big elephant, which is is The Sims 4 over? Is this evidence that they are moving on from The Sims 4? And I think absolutely not. I think if anything, literally everything else that we've seen in this call probably proves otherwise. First off, they have not mentioned Sims 5. Pretty much until they actually call it Sims 5 or call it something that indicates that this is the spiritual successor to The Sims 4, I would say that they are still actively developing content for Sims 4. It takes a various amount of time to make a AAA video game title. I've seen on average 2 to 5 years, but sometimes in the name of sequels, because the developer wants to do it right, they don't want to mess it up, or there's just that tremendous weight of the expectations surrounding the franchise, it can take a decade. Like there's some Duke Nukem and Diablo references and Half-Life references in there, I'm sure. On top of that, The Sims is a super complex game. Even when it came out, it had a lot of stuff in its engine. I don't think that they're going to continue to use the Sims 4 engine because it doesn't really feel like they are very constrained by it based on things that they're saying about their current development and the limitations with things like spiral stairs and bunk beds that are constantly coming up. I think that we're going to see a completely new game engine, or at least a significantly different game engine, and as a result, that's going to make it take extra long to work on it. And The Sims 4 isn't going away overnight. We're probably going to stop seeing new content for it after a certain point, but I have a feeling that it's going to take a while. Sims 5 is objectively better than Sims 4, and nearly every way, there are still going to be people that like Sims 4 either for nostalgia or because they have a ton of constant content, or it runs better on their computer, or they've got characters that they're invested in. This isn't killing Sims 4. When they do get to the point where they release a game, there's still normally like at least 18 months of development left between hey, we're working on this video game, and hey, this video game is out. So I don't think if we saw Sims 5 before 2022, I would be positively astonished. This is also not likely to be competing for resources with The Sims 4 right now. It's an entirely different staff from what I've read, so it doesn't seem like that is going to be something that's holding back The Sims 4. Yeah, there are probably people that left from that development team to go to the new development team, and you don't have those specific individuals, but you still have a lot of people working hard on content, at least for now. I also think that it's unlikely that we're going to see a online Sims that just comes out and immediately has the type of features that like an MMO would have. One of the things that I thought was interesting is this, we're seeing the competition nature of The Sims is also rising up, and we're seeing people compare and contrast, not competition in the traditional sports sense, but how they create and what they create and how they use their imaginations and what they're able to build inside their Sims universes. Here's my line of thinking. I think that we're going to see a Sims 5 that is going to have more features that are kind of like the user features that we've got right now, things like Simstagram type ideas where they're actually social media platforms that are like built into the game where you can, post your social media stories, like where you can actually have your Simstagram posts go somewhere. I think it's far more likely that we're going to start seeing features like that sprinkled in either in the process of additional expansions to The Sims 4 or in The Sims 5, and that for like a fully multiplayer, intensely on a line, very interactive experience, we're probably significantly further off on a title like that. I think that the savvy move for them is just to try and have additional services that are built into the game that allow people to share the content that they're making with other simmers to help drive competition in that way. Because it's a good way to add a multiplayer element that simmers want without having to add a tremendous amount to the overall game structure or changing the way the game works. The Sims Online was just such a vastly different feel to the rest of the Sims franchise, and I really would be surprised if The Sims 5 had significant similarities to an MMO. I think it's probably going to be something like, I think Stardew Valley does like a 4-person multiplayer where you can play with just a couple of your friends. I don't think we're going to see a massively multiplayer experience out of EA anytime soon. Now, one thing that you need to understand about multiplayer before we go any further is that multiplayer is going to cost you money. One way or another, it's going to cost you money. I don't just mean upfront, and it's not a bad thing. Before you're all commenting down below about how evil microtransactions are and all that stuff like that, which I know people are going to do, hear me out. There's a reason why multiplayer often has money associated with it, and it's not all cash grab. A lot of it is cash grab, but it's not all cash grab. First off, initial development. Now, bear in mind, we don't know if this Sims multiplayer experience that they're talking about, if it is a Sims game that is both single player and multiplayer, or if they have a single player game and a multiplayer game that they're considering or working on or what have you. We don't really know what any of that looks like. So the absolute simplest method is that you just have a game that its offline form is pretty much the same as its online form. And there's a lot of benefits to that in terms of it being cheap to produce and stuff like that, but there's also downsides in terms of you don't get a lot of separation if the single player people don't want the features that the multiplayer people want. Therefore, most of the time multiplayer differs fairly substantially from single player. If it's not on the surface, like actual features that you can see and interact with in the game, it's the underlying mechanics. If the single player and the multiplayer are significantly different, then that's almost like making two whole games from the onset, and every time you want to patch or update or things like that, it's the whole process but done in two different ways for the single player and for the multiplayer versions. Again, the big benefit to having many things be the same is it's super quick and cheap to develop, but then if you have multiplayer features that single player people don't like, you don't really have a lot of ways around it. Like, the more parity you have, the more similarity between the multiplayer and the single player, the less likely you are to have access to things like cheats and like custom content and mods, and it becomes a lot harder for us to fix the game. So if they go for that easy route of multiplayer, that's one thing. If they go for the harder route, then there's the ongoing development costs. Now, initially, when the game releases, they are going to have an influx of cash because, like, spoiler alert, social sells. Just look at the internet. Social is what sells right now. There's a reason that they pointed out that The Sims 4 was an anomaly on this call. However, nearly all modern methods of multiplayer gaming involve some sort of central server that at minimum connects the two people that are playing, or the multiple people that are playing, and nowadays almost always has at least some game hosting, if not complete game hosting capability. It's very expensive to host that type of servers long term. Companies regularly spend millions of dollars a month just on servers for servering. That's not even including any of the other stuff that needs to be done, all of the human peoples that need to be involved, all of the work hours that need to be involved, all of the physical components that they need for testing and for the offices. When multiplayer exists, players get a lot more frustrated when the game is unbalanced or unfair because they see other players benefiting from things around them that they cannot benefit from. You can't just acknowledge that a bug exists and hope that people just cheat or wait or tolerate it or find a mod that fixes. I don't know where I got pad from. Find a mod that fixes it. Game altering mods are pretty much banned from almost every game with any type of online presence. Very few games allow anything more in terms of custom content than just pretty objects like clothing and skins and stuff like that. And I would be very surprised if this was a full multiplayer online type thing if they allowed custom content, and we're gonna get that down to that later. On top of that, online forums, support, moderators, game masters. If you have like a full MMO style experience, you need a tremendous amount of those people, and more of those people need to be multilingual because you will actually have those people logging into the game and mediating disputes real time. It's not as practical to be doing like Google Translate. Yes, they probably have filters that handle a lot of it, but that's just more things that need to be doing work, even if they're not people. There's computer labor and work there. Computer labor costs money too. Security, not just to protect the users from one another, but also to protect the overall stability of their servers from things like denial of service attacks and hackers and all kinds of stuff like that. We're gonna have to pay a subscription fee, or we're gonna have to pay microtransactions. Where it gets icky is where you're paying a ton of money for that and they're profiting hand over fist, and it's just pure profit. It's not actually going to any labor, computer or otherwise. I understand that companies need to make money to succeed. Companies need to be profitable to succeed. That's how things work in a capitalist society. However, a lot of times EA not the most fairness with those. They do not do so hot with microtransactions. I played The Sims Mobile briefly, and I felt that it was absolutely exorbitant, the amount of money they charge for just like a few items in the mobile game. Like, I understand the games need this kind of stuff, and I still think that a lot of the costs for things were excessively high. And I mean, obviously there's an argument that if people are paying the money, that the price isn't too high, but where is the money coming from, and what is the money getting us? You can do subscriptions, you can do microtransactions, you can do ads. I suspect we'll probably see a combination of subscriptions and or microtransactions, maybe ads as well, but I think they're probably just gonna go for microtransactions because that just seems to be what they do. Random lotteries and random crates are a huge thing. Loot crates are a particularly gross thing, in my opinion, because your chances of winning anything are just so freaking low in most cases. Then there's decorative content, which is you pay for the pretty stuff. You pay for clothing or furniture or things like that, but you don't necessarily pay for things like careers or interactions or traits or aspirations. This is less contentious among fans because you can still play, you just can't play as prettily, but it does kind of negatively impact people, especially people of a younger age that don't have rich parents. Yeah. You pretty much always lose access to custom content then, because people are never going to spend money for decorative pretty stuff if they can just add whatever pretty stuff they want to the game. The other middle ground that I could see for that to allow custom content is to have approved CC creators who can sell their items in some sort of in-game market, and they get part of the profit and EA gets part of the profit, which honestly wouldn't surprise me, because it's gotta bother EA that some artists get money on Patreon and they don't see any of that money. I don't think they should necessarily see any of that money, especially because some of these creators are working nearly full-time on mods and CC for us. They deserve to make money. But then you're in this whole gray area of who decides who the approved people are, who decides what the approved content is, what is the process for like getting approval, you know, who owns that stuff once it's in the game. Does it just become EA's property? Can they use it in other things, in other ways? Like, that adds a lot of sticky wickets that would be kind of difficult from a legal perspective. Things that are from a third-party franchise, a franchise that they don't own. They have to know if something is designed to look like something from a third-party franchise so they don't get sued. There's a lot of legalese in that makes me think that that's probably unlikely. I wish there could be some way for EA to sponsor CC creators so that we could get better quality more regularly from these creators, and these creators can get the money that they deserve, but all of the intricacies of copyright law and such make it very unlikely, in my opinion, that we're really going to see that. So I was originally going to discuss Sims Online and my experiences with it, and that was going to be my whole video, but I'm going to do that in a separate video. I have a lot of thoughts about Sims Online. I played it when it initially came out. MMOs often lead to one sort of grind or another. Either you're killing a lot of rats, or you're crafting a lot of things, or you're, spamming a lot of dance emotes to win some seasonal thing. Like, there's always some sort of grind involved. They want you to keep giving them money, so they want you to keep playing, and therefore they just keep adding things that you have to play a lot to achieve. And again, this is where play to win faster kind of comes into effect. Sims Online was no exception to that. In fact, Andrew Park from GameSpot said, instead of walking into a house and seeing a bunch of people throwing a party and doing fun stuff, it's not uncommon to see them just sitting there frantically playing chess or writing on the chalkboard in large groups, just trying to improve their skills and make lots of money. Unfortunately, there really isn't that much to do with money except building your own house with your skill objects and your own job objects. The way The Sims works, it kind of translates weirdly into an online setting or a multiplayer setting. I think it's not as bad on mobile devices because by default those games tend to have more simplistic mechanics, but a lot of the Sim games have fairly comprehensive gameplay. Like, there's a lot of different things that you can choose to do in game. Your behaviors control a lot about the characters. You have a lot of things available to you that you don't necessarily have in mobile games. For The Sims 4, there aren't really any set character plot lines, except for like the one sits by the aspirations. You know, you have like the Strangerville plot and things like that. One of the ways that they should be looking to add a good amount of content to make a multiplayer experience better is going to be to make it actually have a plot line, and I'm not necessarily sure I trust them to do that anymore. The way people currently are encouraged to play The Sims is you use this as a platform to tell your own stories, and that may be great for you, and if you're running a YouTube channel, that might be great for people that watch your YouTube channel, and streamers might be great for those streamers, but by and large, when you play a multiplayer game, you're not looking to tell your own stories in a bubble, and you're not really looking to just listen to other people's stories. You're going to have some people that are into role-playing and they're into that kind of aspect, but that's not going to be the primary driving force for the large majority of people that play a multiplayer game to keep a game running long-term. Like, eventually, you run out of ideas in your own head for most people. Nearly every online multiplayer game keeps people invested by having some sort of progress or hierarchy, and something that I refer to as aspirational envy. Basically, that is when you see another character in World of Warcraft and they got some sweet-ass loot, and you're like, man, I want some sweet-ass loot. So you grind and you grind and you grind, even past the point where you're no longer interested in the content and the game has kind of lost its fun and a lot of your friends have lost interest. You keep grinding because you want that thing, or you want to be able to say that you did this thing or achieved this thing. It's not actually about the game anymore, but the little dopamine hit that you're getting every time you achieve something. And that concerns me, because I think that is probably why so many games have so much grindy stuff, and I worry about what the grindy stuff could do to make The Sims not as fun. And because of that aspirational envy, you are not likely to see custom content if that's the theme that they're going with, because why would you grind for that content if you could just download Kawaii Stacy's version of it or something? Like nobody would do that. They would just download the custom content and move on with it. Personally, for Sims 4, I would love to know whether or not custom content helps them or hurts them. Because on the one hand, it does fix a lot of bugs. It allows a lot of people who don't like the look of the game to play a game that looks prettier. It allows people to tell stories that the game's parameters don't necessarily control. It adds maturity to the game. Literally, you can have anything in a mod from menstrual cycles to murder and back again, and you're good. But on the same token, how many people don't opt to buy Sims packs because they're like, I can just download custom content for free? I would assume that's not most people. And maybe that impacts them for things like stuff packs. I don't really see that for game packs and expansion packs, just because there's supposed to be gameplay elements in those packs that, you know, it's a little bit harder for a custom content creator to deliver upon. But I'm sure there are people that are like, I'm not going to pay money for this. I'm just going to download a bunch of free content and I'll play whatever game I can get for free. Their system of hella custom content allowed is completely the opposite of everything that EA does for everything else, where they don't want anybody tampering or cheating or getting anything for free, to be quite blunt. And let me tell you, if this is one game and this is a Sims 5, and they think that they can pull another one of these no pulls or no decent hairs for Sims that aren't white, then nope the F out of that. I don't want to see another Sims game where they woefully underpowered the initial game to get a new game out, and I hope they learned from that mistake with Sims 4. And, like, I understand that we're gonna see expansion packs, but, like, expansion packs should not be core features. They should not be things like toddlers and pools. They should be things that, like, are actually optional, you know? They can't just dangle a multiplayer carrot in front of us and hope for the best. Anyhow, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this subject. I've talked more than enough. I'm probably going to do a video on The Sims Online. I have a lot of ideas regarding that video. If you would like to see that, please comment down below so I know. And as per always, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps out my channel a lot. Thank you so very much, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. Stupid, why am I saying these things? They see other players benefiting it. They see other players.